Every one of her behaviors raises a red flag for me.
Yeah, I can't stand entitled people. They piss me off big time. Big time. So she's realised, oh, I can get a lot more people on this vegan bandwagon. I can get a lot more money in my pocket because of them.
The best documentary I think you can watch is one called Forks Over Knives. It is an incredible documentary that contains very convincing evidence that...
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, my friends. I am joined here by Jonathan, the man, the myth, the legend from across the pond. We are going to be joining forces once again. Hopefully I won't make anything controversial, but we're going to be reacting to her video is entitled Heart Disease Reversal Diet. Did the carnivore diet cause my stroke? Now, this is from a content creator called 50 Plus Beauty. And just a super quick background before we get into this to lay the groundwork in case you haven't seen her content regarding the stroke. So she was following a carnivore diet, I believe for over a year, had a stroke a few months ago, did a video about the carnivore diet possibly causing her stroke. It turned out that she ended up with a hole in her heart that likely caused a stroke according to the doctor. And now I believe the video we are going to be reacting to is she is now back to plant-based eating. So that is the long and the short of it. That is a video we're going to be reacting to. But Jonathan, do you have any thoughts before we dig into 50 Plus Beauty?
I'm skeptical about this, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully it's not clickbait. Hopefully it actually makes sense and it's a good one. So yeah, without further ado, let's rock and roll. You ready, Jonathan? You're ready.
Hi there, I'm Beth with 50 Plus Beauty, and I'm here to discuss something kind of personal with you, and that is the progress that I've made in my way of thinking and in my lifestyle choices since I had my stroke. And as those of you who follow my channel, you may remember that on August 15th, about 4 months ago, just under 4 months ago, I had a stroke. It was about 5:30 in the morning. I was in the basement doing my weight routine, and all of a sudden my left side went numb. My face went numb on the left side. I couldn't look very good at that point, although that was the last thing I cared about at that moment. I ran up the stairs and said, "Oh, and I'm having a stroke. Call 911, call 911." And Alan had the foresight as we were waiting for the ambulance to say, "Beth, get your cell phone and record yourself having this stroke because maybe you'll be able to help other women." And I did that.
Okay, first off, that's super scary. But can you imagine, like, if I said, "Honey, I'm having a stroke," to my husband, take me to the hospital, and if his first words were, "Get your phone out and record yourself having a stroke"?
That is bloody odd. All I can think is like, oh, money, money, money. Oh, let's get someone to get some ad revenue on our videos.
Right?
That's all I can think. Yeah, a complete sellout already by the sounds of it. I wouldn't do that. I especially wouldn't let my partner do it. If it's my partner, you know, and they had an issue like that, I wouldn't record it at all. I'd tell them not to record it because it's, you know, it's a personal thing. Shouldn't be online.
Yeah, if those were the first words out of my husband's mouth, "Go get your cell phone and record yourself having a stroke," I think I would probably smack him upside the head because that would not even be a thought on my mind. Like, get me to the hospital, my face is paralyzed, like something's not right. Oh my gosh, I just had to say that because that's just so weird to me.
And I'm going to play the little segment that I made that morning of the stroke. The audio isn't good. I don't know why, but here I am the morning of the stroke.
Okay. See, I'm smiling halfway. I just had a stroke, probably a mild stroke, like a TIA. But I just had a stroke down in the basement. I was doing my arm weights on a bench, on an incline bench, and I was pushing my arm up in the air. I have just 15 pounds, which is not heavy. And unfortunately, my left arm started going numb. And then I thought immediately, maybe I was having a stroke. My left leg went numb.
And I was very fortunate because I immediately realized I was having a stroke, got to the hospital, and again had that clot-busting drug. And within 2 to 3 hours of having had that drug, my face was back to normal. My left side wasn't numb anymore. I was one of the lucky ones who realized I was having a stroke right away. And in fact, just 3 days later on that Saturday, I made my first video about the stroke and the Be Fast. And if you haven't watched that, I hope you will, because in that video, I do a little education to all of my viewers out there to help them identify if they or a loved one is having a stroke in order to get them to the hospital right away. So hopefully they can also have that life-saving clot buster drug. Well, the doctors were amazed in the hospital that I had had a stroke because they said, Beth, you have none of the risk factors. You're slender, you're not overweight, you don't have diabetes, you don't have known heart disease, you work out, you eat well, at least they thought I ate well. Although in terms of my diet, for the past 5 years, I had been on a very high-fat diet.
Okay. So she said lots there, and I know we don't want to unpack all of this, but risk factors, diabetes, obesity, I think she mentioned cholesterol and exercise, all these things. So if you understand, a stroke is an issue. It's stemming from the brain, right? And she's on a high fat keto diet. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's the same with diabetes. Being obese isn't, in my opinion, if you're obese, you would have a higher chance of getting diabetes. But there are skinny people who have diabetes because it's a blood glucose problem. So what do you think about her doctor mentioning those very specific risk factors?
I think there's probably some interplay between them. I would say they probably are risk factors. Anytime, you have one of those things, usually you accompanies with something else. If someone's diabetic, perhaps they're using insulin, metformin, things like that. In which case, that's going to do a downstream effect in the body, which could potentially cause a blood clot. It's very possible. In regards to the other things, I mean, every time you add in a medical intervention, something else will happen, whether you like it or not. So you effectively get side effects. Sometimes these side effects are wanted, sometimes they aren't. So, for example, if you use, I don't know, insulin, the effect is it reduces excess blood glucose. The side effect is it makes your pancreas less effective at producing its own glucose. And it doesn't activate in response to the food that you're taking in, which means you have to be very meticulous about the amount of insulin that you're using. It's not rate limited by your own body, your hypothalamus, your senses, your receptors around your body. So it's not an ideal situation to be in. I would personally say they are risk factors.
Yeah, I'm curious what she says about diet, because she was following a high-fat diet leading up to this. Her doctors necessarily didn't agree with her diet. I believe she went plant-based and then went back to a high-fat diet. Now I believe she's plant-based again. So I'm sure we'll get into the nutrition, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of confusion here with what she's saying. So I'm going to continue. I'm excited to see what she says about her diet.
Leading up to the stroke, for 4 years, I was on the keto diet, of which I was very high meat and butter and cheese and that kind of thing. And then in the last year leading up to the stroke, I had gone to the very high saturated fat carnivore diet. And quite honestly, I had gotten to the carnivore by listening to social media influencers who seemed to talk a good game. They seemed to have studies that supported the carnivore diet. But since my stroke, I have done more research, and I have found that those studies are quite lacking in terms of the carnivore diet. There are no long-term studies at all on the carnivore diet. And some of those social media influencers are actually trying to raise money for a documentary in support of the carnivore diet.
So she's talking about Homestead How, Carrie. You can't lump all the influencers into Carrie. But second off, there's also no long-term studies on plant-based, like true studies, not food logs and food journals. So I think I mentioned this before. So we've been eating an animal-based diet for hundreds of thousands of years, as the species that we currently are today, right? Plant-based is a new kid on the block. That's the hypothesis that should be proven, is a plant-based diet within like the last 10,000 years or whatever it is. It's the plant-based diet, strictly a vegan diet with no animal foods, eating nothing but plants, is the new kid on the block. So that's a hypothesis that we should be trying to prove, not the other way around. That's the first point I wanted to make. And then the second point is just that with the studies. So she's talking about influencers trying to make money and all that. I mean, that's what she's doing when she recorded herself with a stroke, which I feel bad for her that she had a stroke. I don't think anyone should have to go through that. That's terrible. But the fact that the first thought was, let me record myself and do a video and then go to the hospital in the middle of a stroke, like that to me is, I'm going to get a lot of views on this video and make money, but you can't lump every single influencer just because Carrie's trying to make a documentary. Like Sean Baker is a prime example of this. He's one of the prominent voices in the space. Granted, I'm low carb, but he has that same mindset as I do. He's not saying that everyone has to be zero carb. What he is saying is that you should eat predominantly animal foods, and that's pretty much what I promote. So it's not everyone in the space. Sean Baker is a prominent influencer, and that's the exact mindset he has. He's very practical about diet. He's very practical about the research. He's very practical about us not knowing definitively 100% on the outcomes of anything. So I adamantly disagree with her on that influencer statement. But those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree, especially about the first point. You know, the onus of truth, the onus of evidence is on them, the plant-based folk, to prove what they're doing over the past, 3.5 million years. Well, what we've been doing for the last 3.5 million years is wrong. Apparently not. We could see if we allotted a chart, for example. I don't have one to hand. I can't put it on the screen because I'm not magical, I'm not a bloody unicorn. But I can say if you had a chart and you sort of said, okay, this is a frequency of strokes per capita, plant intake up, stroke intake up, without a doubt. Now, whether it's the plants, the sugar, the fiber, the process, who knows? It seems to be the processed stuff, whether it be plants or sugar, whatever it is the problem. It's the new, like you said, it's a new kid on the block. And there's a heap of confounding factors when it comes into this. Was she using different supplements? I can think of at least 2 different supplements which could have impacted her heart event. So yeah, that's just two different things. So one of them is her vitamin K2 status. If she is supplementing with that, that could have actually caused a heart attack or a stroke or anything like that. Reason being, if you go from a plant-based diet with K1, for example, so pyrrolinoquinine, whatever it's called, vitamin K1 basically, then you switch to an animal-based diet with vitamin K2 in it. We know through various different studies that K2, particularly MK4, can help dislodge calcium deposits in the blood vessels. The problem is, if we do that, we try to do it too fast, that can cause blood vessel damage, endothelial damage to the blood vessels. So she could have been doing that. Maybe she was eating more cheese, like she said. You know, she wasn't eating cheese before maybe as much. Maybe she did a diet of a lot of fatty beef and a shitload of cheese, in which case, well, yeah, cheese is going to have a lot of K2 in it. It's one of the richest sources of K2. Chicken thighs, loads of K2. If her vitamin K2 status goes up significantly, that could cause that. Other things that might change this are vitamin D. Maybe she's eating a lot of oily fish, but maybe before she's deficient vitamin D, maybe her uptake of calcium was higher. Therefore, she had a higher calcium deposit within her arteries. Maybe that was happening as well. So you just don't know. It's pure speculation. If I'm honest, I can't get behind what she's saying. I think what she probably did was went keto for 5 years, did the carnivore diet, bam, just like that, got rid of everything else. And she's already unhealthy to begin with. Now, what we know about any kind of heart disease is, for the most part, apparently, it seems to be a long-burning, a slow toxin. So it seems to be, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't get heart attack, guys, from eating a bag of Doritos. You get a heart attack from eating inappropriate foods, species inappropriate foods, for a prolonged period of time, which is why we don't see a high incidence rate of heart attacks and strokes in very young people, because it takes a long time for those arterial plaque build-up pieces to gather up, basically. So that's kind of my take on it. So there's too many confounding factors. I think she's looking the wrong way. But I want to make one point. Early, she put on the screen a picture of her when she has having a stroke. Face is a bit wonky, you know, as it would be. She said, 4 or 5 days later, back to normal, just as you see her now on the screen. She was doing the carnivore diet at that point. I don't see people having a stroke, then going pretty much back to square one within 5 days following another diet.
Yeah, the stroke happened on a Tuesday, I think it was, or a Thursday, one of them, and then she was back to normal on, I think it was like 3 days. She was back to normal on that Saturday. So the carnivore diet, yeah, because she was a high fat diet leading up to that, I would imagine that helped her recovery.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, and that's the key point. Now, as soon as she said that, I was like, "That's a quick recovery."
Yeah,
What?
that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I would say, hey, slow down. Instead of saving money toward that documentary, save money toward a long-term study that will show the effects, the true effects in one's body of the carnivore diet. Because as someone like me can attest, what we eat is super important to our health. And I do believe now that high saturated fat actually does lead to heart disease. And I believe that is what I have. Obviously, I had a stroke, which is one of the elements.
So she was on a high fat, high saturated. So, okay. She said she was on a keto diet for 4 years. And this last year leading up to the stroke, she was high fat carnivore. That's where she was eating predominantly saturated fat, was that final year leading up to the stroke. You're not going to have a stroke just by a year following something. Just like you said, it takes a long time, years, decades for things to build up. So I don't buy that it's the carnivore's fault for her having a stroke. It was that year of eating saturated fat that led to the stroke. There's no way. It takes a longer amount of time for that. And then two, yeah, we get our cholesterol from saturated fat, sure, but a lot of it is based on genetics, and your body is going to regulate and make its cholesterol from the substrates we consume, whether we have to eat. So whether you're eating a saturated fat and whatnot, your body's still going to make cholesterol because our bodies are cholesterol and protein. We need cholesterol and protein to survive. So that's how important it is that our body's going to make it because our cells need it. Our brain needs it. Our organs need it. So I don't buy that year of carnivore led to our stroke, and I don't buy that excess saturated fat or consuming a high saturated fat diet leads to heart disease. That's a very strong statement. In isolation, LDL, as long as all your other markers are optimal, there's nothing that shows a high LDL in isolation is a cause of anything. Now, if your A1C is jacked and you're fasting insulin and all these other things are jacked, plus you have high LDL, then sure, maybe that would be cause of concern. But if all your other markers are healthy and optimal, there's nothing that shows that LDL is an issue. That leads me to believe that she had other issues and other things leading up to this, not just LDL or not just her eating saturated fat. There were other things going on that I don't think she's disclosing here. But what do you think?
I completely agree with everything you just said there for sure. Just to bring awareness of the point she made about, why are these carnivore influencers trying to make a documentary? Why don't they try and fund a study? Well, actually, that we are trying to do that. I say we, not me, but the community as a whole is. We're developing what we call a three-headed dragon here. So we've got the documentary that's underway, being in progression right now. We've got the Nick Norwitz stuff, the, cholesterol hyperresponder stuff. And the other thing is we've got the Revero, now it's called, I think it's called Revero, Sean Baker's practice, which is basically, I think he's a co-founder or co-owner in it, using a carnivorous diet, predominantly or animal-based at least, to help put different disease states into remission. So we do actually have a way in, but we have to attack it from different angles. Now, the way we're going to get maximum funding is disproving the cholesterol hypothesis, the lipid disease hypothesis. The other one is, of course, a documentary to bring awareness to it, get people clicking, get people thinking about it, more public eyes. And the third thing is the other thing I just said. So it all comes together. But yes, we are trying to create some kind of hardcore study. Which is right in a sense, yeah, we don't have any hard science, but the hard science we apparently have doesn't seem to indicate that cholesterol is apparently unhealthy. In terms of heart disease, we see the highest rates of heart disease, historically speaking, in ancient Egyptians. Now, I know I always bring this one up, but it's something we can all understand and listen to and relate to. We all learned about in ancient Egyptians at school, I believe. So what they found was they started adding in grains to their diets to feed the slaves. So these foods were slave foods. If you're eating porridge, guys, it's a slave food. If you enjoy it, fair enough, your thing. But it is a food for slaves. That's what it's developed for. Oats, grains, all these little mushy, watery things. And that seems to be what caused all the heart disease back in those days. Now, how do we know that? We have mechanisms which point towards that. Chronic systemic inflammation, when someone goes on a mixed macronutrient diet with protein, carbs, and fats in a high level, particularly if the protein's low and the carbs and fats are particularly high, and that activate the Randall cycle, which is pro-inflammatory, which seems to basically build up that blood glucose, blood insulin level corresponding, which seems to impact inflammation. So, yeah, she is a bit. She's very much. I won't say it's a respectful way. She's very much a novice when it comes to understanding science. She's just extrapolated here and listened to one guy on a podcast, and she's got fearful, and she's gone back to her old ways, which are probably what caused the problem in the first place.
Of heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, diabetes, that kind of thing. They're all kind of linked together. Maybe not diabetes, but all of those are lifestyle issues that can really be impacted by one's diet. And I will say that now, instead of all that meat and butter and cheese on the carnivore diet, I have now gone to a whole foods plant-based eating plan. However, I still need to get to a lower fat version of this plan, which I will do this coming Friday, and I will explain that.
I want to get onto a low fat version of plant-based diet. By definition, plant-based dieting is low fat, but she's going to be missing at least 16. I did a video on my channel about this. You're going to be missing at least 16 vitamins and minerals consuming a strict plant-based diet. Even with supplementation, you're going to have to take a butt ton, which is a scientific metric, of pills. And even pills, our body's synthetic nutrients are foreign to our body, right? So our body responds differently to synthetic than real food, real nutrients in their correct form. But you're not getting the nutrients in the correct currency, as Bart K likes to say, by eating a plant-based diet. And even the synthetic forms, I like using iron as an example because a lot of women are anemic. Yes, iron supplements have both heme and non-heme. The problem is it's more non-heme than heme. And the amount of heme in iron supplements, for instance, is underdosed, but it's also synthetic. So even with supplementation, you're going to be lacking. You're lacking the wrong form of vitamin K, vitamin A. You actually need retinol. There's a lot that go into play that's not talked about in the vegan community, and I don't think they understand that. I don't think she understands that clearly. So she's going to be malnourished. She already had a stroke, and if she's not feeding her brain saturated fat and her cells saturated fat and all these things, she's setting herself up for failure and possibly maybe another stroke down the line because she's not appropriately feeding her body, her organs, her cells, what her body needs in the correct currency, in the optimal forms, in the optimal amounts, and the most bioavailable. So I feel for her, and I'm frustrated for her that she's going backwards, in my opinion. But what are your thoughts on that?
Honestly, I think she's a charlatan. I think she's just jumping on the bandwagon to whatever the next best thing is. And we see this with a lot of people in our space. Now, granted, a strict carnivore diet is not for everyone in terms of just beef and lamb, salt water. No, I don't follow that. I follow dairy, eggs, beef, lamb, turkey, chicken, fish, all that sort of thing. People like yourself, Nicole, you add a bit more variety. You add a few salady things, a few nuts, seeds, maybe, I don't know. Bit of chocolate here and there, fair enough. Berries.
Things.
I don't know much about those. I don't eat them. But yeah, see, it's a spectrum of animal-based. But what we've seen in our space right now is a lot of people are selling out. Loads of them. Loads of people that were carnivore influencers now are selling out because they've done it for a period of time. They've got the health benefit they want, but they can't drop out the chocolate for whatever reason or whatever it is. You know, each their own. I don't judge people, but the thing is, she's gone full circle. So she's not gone animal based. She's gone, you know, how do I get more money? How do I get sponsored by Thrive Marketplace in the US? How do I get more supplements to promote? We'll have to look at her bio a bit later, just shortly after this video, but I'm be interested to see if she is an affiliate, is endorsed by anything, because I'm sure that could certainly come into it. Maybe she's had a little message here and there. A lady that's with a big channel, maybe she's been coerced and sort of promoting something else. We've seen that before with, you know, Paul Saladino, of people like that, Liver King. A lot of, I won't go any further because some of them still are entrenched in our carnivore space, or my carnivore space. But yeah, a lot of them are sellouts, in my opinion.
That's a fair point. We should definitely go through her comment section. But while you were, I'd be interested to see what her comment section looks like. I believe she was plant-based before keto and carnivore. And obviously now she's plant-based again. But her channel, she is a larger influencer. She's got over 300,000 subscribers. So she has quite the following. But yeah, that's a fair point, and I think it'll be fun to check out some of her comments after the video too, just to see what's going on, because I'm sure she gained a large following from the low carb community, I'll just call it. So now she's plant-based. I'm curious what the comment section looks like, because it's probably a mixed bag.
To you in just a few moments, but I will tell you that, like many of you out there, I originally loved the carnivore diet. And about 2 weeks after I had that stroke, I had done some research and I found this one cardiologist who supported the carnivore diet. And I made that video 2 weeks after the stroke stating that I plan to remain on the carnivore diet. That was before I started to do more research on strokes in general. And in fact, the American Stroke Association gave me a horrifying statistic. They have found that 1 in 4 people that have a stroke are likely to have a second, usually more serious stroke the second time. And after what I went through, it was very important to me to do the research and to get on a program of health support that would keep me from ever having a stroke again, that would keep me heart healthy. And I will say that in that first video, I offered to reach out to Dr. Ken Berry because I wanted to get his take on this. I wanted to hear from other carnivore influencers. And with the exception of one influencer, Bella, the steak and butter gal, she did reach out to me and we did do a short video about my decision to remain carnivore. But none of the other influencers that are in the carnivore sphere reached out to me. And I know they knew about my video because
Why is it their responsibility to reach out though? Like, is that what she's expecting? So she's not carnivore because Ken Berry didn't respond to her message? Like, how is that their duty to reach out to her because she happened to have a stroke? Like, that's kind of boggles my mind, first off. Second, if you're not feeding your brain saturated fat, right? That's largely what your brain is. Yes, of course, your brain and your cells, you need glucose, sure, but a very small amount. It doesn't take a lot. The problem is if that's why fatty acids and fats are essential. You need to get it from your diet. If you're feeding your body and your brain excess glucose, fiber is plant material your body can't do anything with, but if you're feeding your brain excess glucose, you are suffocating your brain and you are going to damage your brain cells, and that affects the release of oxygen into your bloodstream. So her chances of having a second stroke, in my unmedical professional opinion, making up my own words here, is she's likely going to have a second stroke, or her chances are higher to have a second stroke because of that excess glucose. That's what's going to happen. That's what happens in the brain, is you are damaging your brain cells. And once your cells are damaged, that's it. They're damaged. So your brain needs saturated fat. And if you're not giving your brain the correct form of nutrients and energy that it needs, you're going to run into issues. But I don't know. What do you think? Like, she reached out to all these influencers. She did research. She didn't explain the research she dug into, what she learned about nutrition, which is a bummer so far. But what do you think about a plant-based diet and the statistic when it comes to possibly having a second stroke?
Well, Nicole, I think she needed more fat, more saturated fat. I think that's part of the problem. I think she's probably not eating enough, if anything. But yeah, I'd probably say, I mean, just to touch on the point about, she's bitching on about, oh, Dr. Ken Berry wouldn't talk to me. Wonder why he thinks you're a lunatic. He thinks you're nuts. I'd imagine so. I'm guessing so. That's probably why a lot of people won't touch you. I'm trying to think who else. I've reached out to Bella, Dr. Tony Hampton, Dr. Sean O'Mara, Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Who's the other one? Paul Saladino. About 4 or 5 other carnivore influencers. They won't touch me. You don't see me bitching about it like a wimp. Come on, get a grip. That's what I have to say on that. But yeah, basically she's feeling like a pity party because they won't have her on a channel and boost subscribership to whatever 400,000.
We make up our own words on these channels.
Yeah.
We make up our own words.
They won't boost her up, and that's why she's bitter. That's what it is. She's bitter. She's developed a pretty big YouTube channel somehow, just talking about stuff. I don't really know what the content of her channel's like. She tried to expand her reach for the carnivore diet, realised it's not a massive space. Yeah, granted it's growing, but it's not a massive space. Probably a few million of us, maybe, collectively. So she's realised, oh, I can get a lot more people on this vegan bandwagon. I can get a lot more money in my pocket because of them. That's what it is. And I think she'll even lie to herself because of her absolute narcissism. And she thinks that she's going to sort of get more money, from more subscribers. I think that's the angle she's taking. And I think she'll be too delusional to even admit it.
For the first time collaborating with Jonathan, Jonathan is the angry one. I am so proud of myself. Jonathan is the angry one.
Yeah, I can't stand entitled people. They piss me off big time. Big time. People that think they could just take from you. I don't like that.
I agree. Let's continue and see what else she has to say. I'm sure she's going to complain about more influencers not reaching out to her.
How can you miss it? It had 100,000 views. And here I was in the thumbnail, having had a stroke on Carnivore. And I did try to get Dr. Ken Berry, but I emailed him several times and I was never able to get a response from him. And I would still like to have his response, quite honestly. And first, let me tell you that I had a life-threatening experience. So that made me jump in and do a lot more research than I would have had I just been going along on the carnivore diet. I was largely believing the things I was hearing and, they were kind of surface, but I knew a lot of people reported good results and I felt good on it. So everything was fine. But I am not saying that anyone out there should not do the carnivore if they want to do it. Every one of us is different and we all have our own goals and we all have our own beliefs. And so please don't crucify me in the comments section if you're pro-carnivore, because I'm not telling you you need to go plant-based. However, for me, after doing my research.
You look like you're having a stroke over there. What do you want to say, Jonathan?
I feel it. I do feel it. I mean, it's just complaining, like nagging in your ear like a bitching wife that's pissing you off. Just doesn't sort of let it go. Can't just drop it. Oh, but on the same token, I'm going to gaslight you and say, oh, but you can do what you want. We're all different. Well, no, actually, love, we're about 99.9% the same. Apart from you're a woman, you're a bit older than me, and I'm from a different part of the world than you, and that's about it. We're largely the same in terms of our biology, our DNA. So no, we don't optimize ourselves by doing a plant-based diet or a carnivore diet. There's a defined limit, a defined bracket of what is an optimal diet, and the diet she's following is not it for a flurry of reasons. Do I have any evidence or science to back my claims? No. Do I know loads of people that have benefited from the carnivore diet that apparently look much younger than they are, which is obviously an apparent fact when it comes to aging and lifespan? Yes. Maggie White, 82, 83 years old, carnivore for 65 years, so a rancher in the States. My friend Rick Rodriguez, 56 years old, looks about 40, doesn't go to the doctor, hasn't needed to go to the doctor, doesn't take any medication at all, slim, strong, fit, healthy. He's been eating heart attack chicken for the last, I don't know, 40 years. So, no, absolutely not. We're not that different. We did have a obligate hypercarnivore background, and we did not have an obligate, I don't know, fruit,
Vegan?
honey, salad for diet. What's it? Herbivore diet. There we go. Science.
We'll be here all day, folks.
I am totally convinced that saturated fat does cause heart disease, that high cholesterol leads to heart disease and heart attacks and strokes. And for me, it is very important now to get my cholesterol down into a healthy range and to eat a truly heart health supportive diet, to exercise and that kind of thing. And if you'd like to see some future videos about the various things I am doing to lead to greater heart health and avoid that second stroke, then please let me know, because I would love to share that information with you. Now, as I mentioned, for the past couple of months, I've been on a whole foods plant-based diet. However, it is not as low fat as they would like it to be, because I have still been eating things like peanut butter, things like hummus with oil, a little bit of olive oil, that sort of thing. But starting this Friday, I am going to be taking a Zoom course along with Alan from Dr. Caldwell B. Estelston, who is an absolute pioneer in the area of plant-based nutrition and actually reversing heart disease. He did a study where he took 24 totally at-risk heart patients and he restored them to total health and actually reversed
A whole
Bollocks.
24.
Bollocks, 24 people. Was that a lock-in lab? I don't know. I can't speak about the study, but from pure speculation, which is probably true if you actually look into it, what we'll find is they alleviated the potential gradient of the Randall cycle by having a high carbohydrate, low fat, low protein diet, and that reduced their systemic inflammation for a short period of time. Now, what's going to happen to those 24 people after the 4 or 5 year mark where a lot of these like vegan folks fall off? What's going to happen then? Where's the follow-up? Where's the longitudinal study? Where's contingency plan for these people that have apparently reversed their heart disease or whatever it is? You know, I don't see it.
Let's continue.
some of their heart disease issues in a very short order of time. And in fact, in this course, Dr. Estelston has already called me and Alan, which is wonderful because it was like hearing from God. I've seen him in many documentaries about reversing heart disease. He called us to get our medical history, and I told him I'd had the stroke, and I gave him my cholesterol numbers and also my blood pressure. And starting this Friday, we will be going on the very strict version of his heart disease reversal diet, which is plant-based but very low oil as well. And within about another month, I will again take my cholesterol numbers and my blood pressure. And if you'd like to see a video about my progress, I would love to share that with you. And if you're on the carnivore diet, thinking about investigating it, or thinking about going on a plant-based eating plan, the best documentary I think you can watch is one called Forks Over Knives. It is an incredible documentary that contains very convincing evidence that a high meat...
I know.
Forks over knives. That's the epitome of movies when it comes to the plant-based propaganda.
Yeah, that and What the Health.
She'll probably go on about blue zones in a minute and Loma Linda and all that shit. Yeah.
Let's find out. Good gravy.
We'll see.
Based saturated fat laden diet really does increase heart disease, cancer, and all sorts of lifestyle related issues. And in fact, in that video, Dr. Estelston mentions the United States and discusses our meat consumption versus the health effects on some other countries that don't have such a high meat diet.
Dr. Estelston also discovered that in the early 1970s, the risk for heart disease in rural China was 12 times lower than it was in the US. And in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, heart disease was rarely encountered. The link he noted between all the areas he studied was simple.
Virtually, the Western diet was non-existent. They had no animal products. They had no dairy, no meat.
And the most convincing evidence to me that a high meat diet causes heart disease, causes cancer, causes strokes, that sort of thing, is some information from history that happened during World War II.
In World War II, the Germans occupied Norway. Among the first things they did was confiscate all the livestock and farm animals to provide supplies for their own troops. So the Norwegians were forced to eat mainly plant-based foods.
If you own a house in the state of Virginia, you probably have no idea, but you can get paid.
Now we look at the deaths in Norway, just antecedent to this period, from heart attack and stroke. 1927, 1930, 35. Look right up here, right at the very top, 1939. Bingo! In come the Germans. Immediately, 1940, wow, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Have we ever seen a population have their cardiovascular disease plummet like this from statins, from bypass surgery, or from stents? No. But look what immediately happened with the cessation of hostilities in 1945. Back comes the meat, back comes the dairy, back comes the strokes and heart attacks. I mean, it's such an absolute powerful lesson.
What you got?
What an absolute reductionist twonk. What a moron. What an absolute moron. Are you shitting me? What everyone knows, what came about in like the 50s, you know, like microwaves, processed food, packaged food. I was speaking to my stepdad, Mike, literally yesterday, so just before we're recording this. And I was like, Mike, so he's 70, 71 years old. So he's been around, he knows what his parents ate, and he's from my area. We had a very similar sort of diet to what they had in Norway at that point in time. And they're eating loads of animal fat throughout. Now, they actually, when you go to the supermarkets, the grocery stores, the Americans call it, they had about a handful of things they could buy. They didn't have any extra stuff. And obviously, all his friends now are much less healthy than him because they eat all that processed food. He is not unhealthy. So it kind of tells me, well, he's eaten a shit ton of suet, you know, kidney fat, lard, tallow, steaks, ribeyes, like the fattiest, juiciest fuckers you can buy. And he's not dying of a heart attack. All of his friends have had health issues. All of them are diabetic. So that's one confounding variable in the processed food. What else has happened in that time? Well, I don't know. You had a major war, which meant people for that period of time could not afford loads of food. They're living off the land pretty much from what they could garner from their immediate area, their farmland. So they're eating a lot less shit because they didn't have such a surplus, such an abundance of food. We can see this for what it's worth in epidemiology. So this guy's talking out his arse. Absolutely.
And then he mentions China, and that's one of the popular things that people compare the United States. I always put the United States first because I think we suck at food, and China. But they always say, yeah, China eats a lot of rice, whatever. First off, they don't eat as much rice as we do. We pile that crap on our plates, right? And second, they're eating just the meat. They do eat a lot of meat. In one period of time, like I think the Japanese had the potato diet. That was one period of time during the famine and all that. Outside of that period, they eat a lot of meat. The difference is when we're talking about meat in the United States, they're not talking about the hamburger patty. They're talking about all the other garbage that comes on it. That's the difference is we're talking processed foods, processed meats, hamburgers, like the full hamburger, not just the patty. So it's an unfair comparison, and I think an incorrect comparison on how him and others are describing the diets when it comes to Japan and China, because those are the two comparisons to the US I hear all the time, but they're not doing correct comparisons on how Japanese people and Chinese people truly eat and what their diet actually looks like, and how scientists are describing the United States meat-based diet. But what do you think about that?
Oh, what the fuck are you going to grow on a mountaintop? Think about it. There aren't berries growing on a mountaintop. There aren't potatoes. There might be a few animals. So pure extrapolation. And a lot of people that, you know, came about in these sort of, you know, they sort of cherry pick this set of people, this set of people. We know they do that. Ansel Keys, for example. Now, the chances are they weren't eating bloody fruit and vegetables in that sort of land. The climate wouldn't allow it. The terrain wouldn't allow it. So I don't believe that for 1 second. I think he's probably went to a couple of little towns, or the studies have looked at a few little towns of people and said, oh, that's what they do. But China's a fucking enormous place. There's no chance in hell they're eating berries and fruit and veg and shit at whatever you call it, in the highlands.
But we didn't get it.
And that was Dr. Esselstyn's first warning that a meat-laden diet really does cause serious health repercussions. And Dr. Esselstyn is one of 4 or 5 other eminent researchers that are in this field that truly believe and have convincing research that shows that a whole foods plant-based diet, a low-fat version of that, can actually not just halt the progression of heart disease, but can actually reverse heart disease. And in fact, Dean Ornish, who is one of those elite researchers, actually has a program to reverse heart disease through diet and lifestyle, basically a whole foods, low-fat, plant-based diet. And his results reversing heart disease with his program are so convincing and so scientifically validated that now Medicare actually reimburses for the Dean Ornish Heart Disease Reversal Program, in addition to the Pritikin program that does about the same thing. Well, if you'd like to see a video after I attend Dr. Esselstyn's program this Friday, I would love to.
I don't think the plant-based diet's working well for her, to be honest. She's, in her 50s, and she can't string a sentence together that lasts more than about 5 words.
Yeah, and Dean Ornish, oh my goodness. Yeah, this heart healthy diet, but you have to think about who the American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, they're funded by Big Food. And I'm not saying like these organizations have to get funding somewhere. So I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying if you look at what is actually included on the diet, we'll say the diabetic diet, for instance, the American Diabetes Association, it's filled with grains still. And that's supposed to help with diabetes. So, I mean, it makes you question and wonder why certain foods are on these lists. But yeah, I don't like basing my decisions on those organizations because of things like that. And I don't have a problem with listening to people on both sides of the aisle. Like I'll listen to, vegan carnivore debates, and I'll listen to what the vegans have to say or plant-based dieting have to say. I do listen to both sides of the aisle to get differing opinions, different points of view and all that. So I don't fault her for that, but it's a shame that she thinks this is concrete, scientific, sound nutrition evidence. When a year ago, she thought carnivore and keto was sound, scientific, nutritional evidence. So I'm wondering what exactly it was that changed her mind. Like what changed her mind and what makes her think this is more optimal for her? I wish she got into that more. But do you have any thoughts before we dig into our comment section real quick?
Yeah, I think it's the bottom number on her paycheck that's on her mind, if I'm honest. Like it's trendy now to quit the carnivore diet. I mean, just recently, I had a bit of maybe a few months back, I had a bit of a scuffle with someone else online. I won't say who it is because I can't be asked to deal with the stress of it, and it's not worth my time. But broadly speaking, they labelled themselves as carnivore, and they absolutely are not carnivore. Then they brown-nose people in our industry, then slag them off, then still go on their podcast to talk about them and say how great they are as a person, how they're such a great friend of theirs, and they kiss and make up and all that shit. It's rubbish. Yeah. It's purely for clickbait. Either she's really stupid, or she's really smart and trying to get loads of money from this. Probably the latter, just based off of recording in the middle of a stroke. But this comment caught my eye, and I know we're not going to go over it because we're, almost an hour, but I figured we'd go over a couple to see just what the comment section has to say. This one from a month ago, I thought I saw Beth say in an earlier video that her stroke was caused by an unknown hole in her heart, not from her diet. To each his own. I'm not carnivore, but I eat predominantly meat and blah, 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 blah. It's very confusing. All these people flip-flopping on YouTube makes it worse. Everybody has to decide for themselves. For me, when I was technically doing so-called
healthy diet. I was the sickest I have been. Now I feel great and work out daily. Her response was carnivore did feel good, I have to admit. Unfortunately, though, it turns out it is not good for one's health. Eating meat and dairy causes a high saturated fat diet. I wish
Good.
I had known before. So she makes a definitive statement that this causes this and this caused this.
Pure based on guesswork. What can I say about people that flip flop, like you just said, on dietary approaches? I mean, yeah, I understand people go from maybe they're not well, standard Western diet, processed food. I'll go vegan, I'll cut out loads of stuff, feel good for a bit, downhill 2, 3, 4 years later, they go to crap. Same in every kind of circumstance. Hence why I've spoken to over 400 ex-vegans. Well,
Yeah.
about half of them are ex-vegans. So yeah, there's a lot of people that I meet that are ex-vegans. I don't meet many ex-carnivores though. So that's quite telling. Now she's appealing to emotion here. So she's trying to say, oh, I'm trying to be fair and balanced in my opinion, but you know, I'm going to get more money out of these people buying fucking grains and $10 boxes of cereal. That's what it is. But yeah, I actually want to see if you can scroll up a second, just see her description box and see what affiliations she has, just out of interest. Amazon store. So the books she recommends. Okay, so they're affiliate links.
Amazon store.
Coaching course.
Mostly, she does like health and makeup and beauty type stuff.
Yeah, but if you think there, she's got product links, outfit links, but now she's got even more links to sell crap that people don't need. She kind of realised, well, most people that would have bought the Carnivore Diet book by, I don't know, Sean Baker have already bought it now. But there's millions and millions more potential vegans on the line that will now click through her affiliate link, which gives her 2-5% of the takings and buy her crap. So yeah. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she's appealing to a different audience. We didn't go over a lot of comments because they were mostly just like cheerleading, rah, 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 which is perfectly fine. But unfortunately, I don't think this is the thing she should be doing. I don't think this is if she wants to eat plants, fruits, veggies, all that stuff, cool, you know, you do you, but you should have animal foods in your diet. If you want to eat plants and fruits, cool. But I mean, you're missing things that you can only get from animal foods, from meat. There are nutrients that you can only get in meat. So if meat is so bad, why are there things in meat that you can only get from meat? And if you don't, like the video I did on a Pioneer that talked about vitamin B3 deficiency in kids, children were dying of major skin issues because of a vitamin B3 deficiency that you can only get in meat. So, I mean, eliminating meat from your diet may not cause short-term issues, but over time, you are going to be, by definition, malnourished following a strict plant-based diet. Those are my final thoughts. I don't think she should have changed. If she wants to include plants, she should have stayed keto, which is better than what she's currently doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'll quickly say, I mean, I know, Nicole, you've said in this talk already about twice, maybe 3 times, about certain nutrients we can't get through meat. And people are going to ask in the comment section, oh, what are they? You know, because you're just saying it, but you're not saying which. Well, the reason why Nicole isn't saying which is because there's like 15 plus of them, and that's the ones we could just think of off the top of our head. So some of those might include carnosine, taurine, omega-3 in omega-3 form, so EPA and DHA. Then there's
vitamin A, retinol,
so real vitamin A, B12, methylcobalamin, K2, MK4, K2, MK7, vitamin E in the form of, is it alpha tocopherols or trinols? I can't pronounce it. What are the other ones? I'm trying to think now. Clearly, I need some more meat.
Yeah, like the all the fat soluble vitamins in optimal forms and optimal quantities.
Creatine.
Yeah. The essential amino acids, 9 of them, you can't get them in one single plant food. You have to pair foods together, like beans and rice are a popular pairing. Yes, soy has complete proteins, but they're not in optimal amounts. But in one single plant food, you're not going to get complete amino acids. You will eating animal foods.
Yeah, I mean, one of the arguments is people say is, oh, if you look at the standard Western diet and the standard, I know, vegetarian or vegan diet, they both contain about, last time I read, this back in uni admittedly, so it's about 6 years ago, 70 to 72 grams of protein per day. And they're about equated between the Western and the, veggie sort of plant-based diet. Problem is there's something called a DIAAS score, so DIAAS, which anyone can look up online right now. And you'll find the bioavailability and efficiency in terms of these nutrients on feed rate on both animals and human beings. We are obviously an animal as well, but you get the point. It just basically says, no matter how you pair the shit out of these things, you could put every single bloody nut, seed, berry, spirulina, crap, kale in a blender, and it won't do the job. It won't do the job. It can't be done. It's impossible. It's an impossible task. Even to get that much nutrition in, you'd end up eating so many anti-nutrients that would wreck your guts anyway. So you're talking about several kilos of food here. I nourish myself on about 1.5 kilos of food a day right now. I don't need 3 or 4 kilos of food. So, I'm much more efficient in that sense as well. So many points we could go into, but I would recommend checking my channel out, or Nicole's, if you wanted a bit more background. So we do explain it all, but we'll be here all day otherwise. But yeah, that's some key points there.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much we could say on this video, but I think if you want further information, I did a video on all 16 that I could think of nutrients that following a plant-based diet is deficient. I have a whole video focused on just that topic alone. Jonathan has videos on similar topics, so definitely check out our channels, and we do go into more detail than we did here. But let us know your thoughts below. Let us know what you think of her backstory and what she's currently doing. If you're not subscribed to Jonathan, be sure to drop him a sub and a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to me, I would appreciate the same. But that is all we have for you in this video. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for future videos and have a happy and healthy day. See you later, friends.
Cheers, guys.
Build muscle and lose fat on the carnivore diet.